All right, ladies and gentlemen, today is another good day the Lord has made. Let us begin by giving Him thanks and praises for preserving our lives to be here up to today. If we look at it, holistically, we are not, there's nothing that we deserve. So it's by His grace we are able to come here today and to attend the lessons. So before we begin as well, let us humbly ask Him to give us His wisdom to be able to understand what we are going to discuss today. Because without His wisdom, there is nothing we can do. So He owns the wisdom, and once He should give us His wisdom, then we can be able to understand what we are going to do today. Right? Okay. Now let's start. We are going to discuss what we call criteria and behavior for effective teamwork in a small project. In a small project or in a simulated project environment. It's very important. There are certain behavior that you need to exhibit in a project environment for you to be able to work harmoniously in form of a teamwork. Because as we know project is a teamwork. And remember, we talked about this before that the success of a project is reliant on the stakeholder. And in a project environment, you have the stakeholders, the internal stakeholders, the employees, the project manager, and whosoever that got direct contact in working with the project. They are stakeholders. So everything is in the teamwork. So one should be able to work harmoniously, collaboratively, to be able to deliver the goal. What I mean by delivering the goal is to be able to complete the project successfully and stand a chance to achieve the objectives of the project. So it's a project is something that is based on shared values, shared commitment, based on trust, or it should be anchored on trust, if you will, for the project to be successful. So, effectively, we are going to talk about the criteria and behavior for effective teamwork in a small project environment, which in essence, we can say working as a valued member of a project team. Right. So, okay. Now, in terms of this presentation, we are going to cover the following areas, key areas that will be covered in this presentation. Right? Firstly, we're going to look at the team membership criteria and behavior expected of a team member in a project environment. We're going to look at what needs to be in place for the team members to take themselves as being valued. Because if they are not regarded as being valued, it will be very difficult for them. They won't be motivated, let's put it this way, to put in their best. It's when they know that they are being valued, their contributions are being valued, then they will be motivated, much more motivated to even go extra mile to put in their best. Then ethical behaviors and positive attitude that one is expected of a team member or from a team member, if you will. Then there's what we call disruptive and constructive behavior. This thing is very important, right? In a project environment, by virtue of the fact that you're dealing with people, you know, people are living things. They are not like non-living things. Remember, there was an example, or one example I gave to you some other time. I said, for a non-living thing, for example, like this chair, you can put this chair here, you can travel, or you may travel to it for days, and you come back. If there is no other person that gets in here, the chair is going to remain like that. But when you tell a human being, say, please wait for me, just a minute, I'm coming. I will be back in 5 minutes' time. Once that person wait 5 minutes, you are not back, the person will be already fed up. That person will be exhibiting that sign of impatience. We always have that sign of impatience. So for you to manage a human being is not easy, right? So in the same vein, in a project environment, there are some disruptive behavior that could hamper the progress of the project, or that could even be destructive to the project as a whole, which could create a kind of destructive situation that make the project objectives not to be realized. We got as well constructive behavior that are healthy in a project environment that can enhance the team dynamics, the team spirit between the team members, which will enable them to be able to work collaboratively as a shared goals or towards a shared goal objective to uh, achieve the purpose of the project or the outcome of the project, if you will. Then we are going to touch on team dynamics. Team dynamics, we are talking about the type of spirit between the team members that will create that synergies for them to be able to work together. Then the factors that influence performance, we're going to speak to that as well. Then we are going to discuss about consultation, joint decision making, and productive communication. This aspect is another important thing that can make a team member to feel valued in a project environment. Consultation, right? For example, you're working with team members. When you want to make a decision, don't make decision alone, right? Be democratic. You have to, you should imbibe that spirit of consultation. You consult your team members, then they can be feel much valued, right? Being part of the decision making. Then communication is very important. We are going to talk about productive communication, how you need to communicate. Remember, you've done this thing as well too, communication, right? How you need to be able to enhance your communication to make it effective, right? Then we are going to talk about the methods for team coherence. Coherence means being able to stick together, working together towards a project performance. And as well, we are going to talk about conflicts, the type of conflict that one could find in a project environment, the categories of conflict. We're going to talk about communication barriers of itself, which is a problem that can hinder one from realizing or achieving the objectives of a project in a project environment that could affect the team members working harmoniously, or uh, that could as well constitute a kind of disruptive behaviors among the team members. Then we are going to talk about communication barrier, which of course can cause a problem in a project environment, the strategies on how to overcome such communication barriers. Then lastly, we are going to talk about how to build relations with the stakeholders, right? Like I said before, the success of a project is reliance on the stakeholders. So being able to build a kind of coherent relationship between the stakeholders will stand a chance of boosting the performance of the project towards the achievement of the project predetermined goals and objectives, right? Now, say on the criteria and behavior conducive to working as a team member. So we said a team member should help the project team succeed, not only focus on individual tasks. So what we are trying to say here is this: note this aspect or this statement is very, very important. You are working in a project, right? The your responsibility is not only, remember the organogram that you did just now, right? Your responsibility is not only for you to be able to execute your task, right? You should be able to help other team members to succeed. Do you understand? So what it means is that you don't focus, it's like you are driving, right? If you want to avoid accident or an accident on the road, you must make sure that you are not only driving your own cars, you must mind what others are driving as well. So in this scenario, what we are saying that you as a team member, the focus should not be only for you to complete your task. You should as well, when it comes to that extent, helping others to complete theirs as well. Because a project work, you are all working towards a shared goal, a common goal, right? If one is not succeeding, it means that the whole system is failing. So you must make sure that whatever you can on your own part to assist to make others to succeed, you should do it in a project environment. So we said based on the behavior conducive to working as a team member, one must act responsibly and complete assigned tasks on time, right? It's very important. When a task is being assigned to a project or to a team member, you've got that responsibility to make sure that you do it properly and you do it, you stick to deadline, right? Because any attempt for you to delay your specific task is gonna have a ripple effect, let me put it that way, on the overall project. Then you must respect the project manager, of course. The project manager is the boss that gives directives. So if you don't respect the boss that is giving directives, it means you are not going to carry out the directives from the boss. So project manager must be respected and the team members and other stakeholders. We said respect is reciprocal. It's a reciprocal application. I respect you, you respect me, right? So they must make sure that each of the stakeholders they respect themselves. You must communicate clearly and listen attentively or listen actively before responding. You see, this aspect is a very important stuff. When somebody is communicating with you, this is where most people get it wrong. If you want to be an active listener, so what you need to do is when somebody is communicating with you, allow that person to finish before you respond. Then you must participate in planning, discussion, and problem solving, contribute ideas, effort, and support shared project goals. And you must also avoid behavior that weaken trust, morale, or cooperation. So these are what could promote conducive or promote behavior conducive to working as a team member. So these are what we are talking about as far as the criteria and behaviors conducive to working as a team member. This can enhance it. So in terms of being a valued member, right, like I said, each team members would like to be seen or would like to see himself or herself being valued, right? As someone that is being valued in the project environment. So we say value members are more likely to participate, contribute, and remain committed. Obviously, for example, as we are working here, if I know that whatever I do or by virtue of my position here as a lecturer, and no one is valuing what I'm doing, or I don't have much value, you know, in the organization, you will not be motivated to do extra or to go extra mile. For example, now I told you I'm well motivated now to do this, record this video because I've seen that the students they like it, they value what I'm doing. So in the same vein, in a project environment, it works like that. If you are a team member and whatever input, right? You are contributing. If you know that your contribution is being valued, obviously it will motivate you to do more. So, what are the things that are, or the dynamics of a team, or that happens in an environment where a team members feel valued, right, in the project environment? So, one, ethical values, right? You must treat others fairly, honestly, and respectfully. Where there is an uphold of ethical values, where you treat people fairly, honestly, respectfully, then the team members obviously can, as a way, look at the environment, and it can spoil or it can engineer them to feel that they are valued in such a business environment. Positive attitude, right? A place that is uh, full of, or in a place where positive attitude is being practiced, right? So it can enhance the project environment. It can promote the employees, or it can give that kind of motivation to the employees that they are being valued, right? There should be, the environment should be positive, there should be positive atmosphere in the environment, and no judgmental conduct, right? Okay, no judgmental conduct. So, what does no judgmental mean? To be, you need to be fair in your judgment, right? You need to avoid that situation of being prejudiced, right? Opinion formed before judgment. You just look at a team member and say, no, nothing good can come out of this. So, one should avoid that kind of environment. And when these uh, factors are in place, or these variables are in place, whereby there is no lack of, there is no, one is not being judgmental. At the end of the day, you see that it will create that kind of healthy atmosphere where people or the team members can feel being valued. Then perseverance, continue working despite obstacles. Then there should be a clear communication whereby you share messages, right? And there should be a situation or an atmosphere whereby contributions are recognized, right? Because once your input is being acknowledged, is being recognized, whatever positive stuff you're doing, you do go extra mile, right? Your achievement is being recognized. It can as well transcend into a situation of one having that feeling of being valued as a team member in a project, right? Okay, you want to go now? Right. Okay, now let me ask you and see if you do understand what we are talking about in terms of contribution recognized. Right. What do you understand by that? You can come forward, then you explain that. And how will you feel being a team member in a project environment if your contributions are not recognized?
Okay, contribution, recognize, acknowledge effect, and show appreciation for useful input.
For example, if you are working in a project environment and it happens that putting going extra mile, let's put it that way, be your best. At the end of the day, you discover all what you do is not ever recognized. How will you feel?
I will feel demotivated because I'm not recognized. It's like my effort is not recognized.
So that is what we are talking about. And once you discover that your efforts are being recognized, it makes you to feel that sense of being valued in the project environment. All right. Yeah, that is a very good answer. Right. Now, we are going to talk about disruptive behavior and their consequences on the team. There are certain behaviors that one do seek. There are certain behavior that people do exhibit and which tends to be disruptive, or let me put it this way, if you like, which tends to be retrogressive as far as the conducive management, or rather conducive management of the project, or conducive execution of the project is concerned. So we are going to talk about such disruptive behavior and the possible consequences that it could have on the team members. So you have more or less like two columns here. You can call it two columns if you will. The first one is the disruptive behavior, then the corresponding consequences for such behavior, you have it on the other side, on the left hand side, right? So one of the disruptive behavior we could talk about in this lesson is ignoring others' ideas. When you are working in a project environment and you've got the tendency of ignoring people's ideas or other people's idea, it could be your team peers' ideas or your project manager's ideas, it's a kind of a disruptive behavior that will not in any form augur well with the execution or the process of execution of the project. So the consequence of that is members feel excluded. And when members of a project or team members in a project, they feel excluded from decision making or whatever they feel they need to be part of. So at the end of the day, it's going to constitute that kind of disruptive behavior on the part of the person concerned, or rather, it's going to create a kind of disruptive behavior thereof, which will not augur well with the execution of the project. Then the other disruptive behavior we can talk about here is poor listening. Poor listening is another kind of disruptive behavior, not being there, attentive in listening. And that one has got its own consequence as well. When you don't listen properly, what would be the possible consequence? You stand a chance of misunderstanding the issues, misunderstanding facts, which could hamper as well the execution of the project or proper execution of the project, if you will. Then you got a kind of disruptive behavior that we tag negative attitude. Negative attitude can lead to uh, demotivation or dampening of morale. That is what we mean by morale and motivation drop. It can dampen, it can weaken the morale and motivation of the team member. Then another disruptive behavior we can possibly talk about here is unclear communication. Right? If communication is not clear, one stands chance of making mistakes. Mistakes can be destructive, can be harmful to the project. It can even be harmful to the team members. Right? So can cause mistake. And in a situation where mistakes are being made, of course, the works needs to be reworked, and reworking on project or task that has been done before can cause a kind of a delay, and delay on itself is consequential to the uh, proper running of the project or the execution of the project. Any delay can have, of course, a kind of a cost implications. So one must be careful, as far as unclear communication as a disruptive behavior is concerned. Then we have conflict, right? Conflict, aggression, right, which can lead to trust and cooperation, can weaken trust and corporations. Then you have lack of commitment, of course, lack of commitment as a disruptive behavior that could affect performance. It can uh, decline performance, it can weaken performance. Let's put it that way. Right. So these are the destructive behavior that we can talk about here, though there might be obviously some other disruptive behaviors which are not mentioned here. But the bottom line is disruptive behavior on its own can affect negatively the execution of a project, and it got its own consequences, which we can regard, if you will, to be retrogressive as far as the execution of a project is concerned. Now, there is a very lovely concept that I would like to introduce you to at this point in time. We call it team dynamics. Team dynamics. Team dynamics is very healthy and it's something that is very important as far as the execution of a project is concerned. So, by way of conceptualization, we say team dynamics means, or it refers to the relationship of behavior, communication pattern, and attitude that influence how people work together. In other words, you can call it a kind of unforeseen spirit that tends to drive collaborative teamwork, collaborative behavior that tends to drive the collaborative teamwork, or let's put it, the collaborative nature in a project environment. So we say team dynamics are the force between members that shape how a team behave and perform. So team dynamics in a project environment is very important. So it helps to drive the collaborative nature of the team members working towards a shared goal, a common goal of the project. Then why does it matter? Like I said, it's very important, team dynamics in a project, because as you do know that project work is a teamwork. So if there is a lack of that team spirit that influences that drive teamwork among the project stakeholders or the team members, at the end of the day, the project will have, we, of course, we experience a problem in terms of its execution, right? So, in such kind of a situation, it will be difficult for the team members to work together. So that team dynamics is very important as it encourages teamwork, of course, like I said, and it helps them to focus on the focusing on the shared goals to achieve the outcomes of the project. So, like we put it here, it matters in the sense that team dynamic encourage teamwork, encourages focus, then it helps to them to focus on the goal of the project towards achieving the boosting the performance of the project or performance of their work to achieve, which are aimed at achieving the objectives of the project. So poor team dynamics, in a contrary, create a kind of conflict and can create a kind of confusion. And by virtue of its implication, of it can weaken the project outcomes. Right. Then As we have it articulately depicted here, you have people needs to interact, right? People interact to create a kind of a team climate which can helps to boost their performance, right? And the factors influencing team dynamics. What are the specific factors or variables that can affect team dynamics, right? So one of the factors is structure. It depends on how the organizational arrangement or the structure of the line of authorities and responsibilities in the project. So fiscal or organizational arrangement can either support teamwork or create a subgroup. For example, in a situation where you have that's what we call co-locations, whereby the team members are located in a specific physical environment. So it can help to boost team dynamic rather than have putting them in a closed offices, get separated from each other. In a situation whereby they meet every day, they interact every day, they it, like we have a kind of a statement that said familiarity breeds concept. So in a situation whereby they are collocated, it gets familiar with themselves more easily and it can help them to work together harmoniously to be able to which can enable them to work in such a harmonious situation aimed at boosting their performance. Then you have the priorities, right? The team goal. So members need shared goals and a clear understanding of what the project must achieve. So this is one of the things that can boost team dynamics. Members knowing about the goal of the project, what needs to be achieved. Because in a sense, in a situation whereby they are confused, and they don't know what needs to be done or what the project goals are all about. It can create that kind of a situation whereby they will not be able to work together collaboratively. Then we have priorities. Different personal priorities can cause tension if they are not aligned to project goals. So what we are saying now is you have different people, different character working in a particular project or in a specific project. Each of the team members have their own personal goals. So their personal goals needs to be aligned to the project goal. Otherwise, things are not going to work out in a way that in an unexpected way. So, for ones to be able to influence, or one of the factors that can influence team dynamics is a priority. In a situation whereby the respective individual they got their own varied priorities that are not aligned with the goals of the project, so it will create that kind of disunity without being able to work together in a collaborative form. Then roles, clearly defined roles and responsibility reduce confusion and the duplication of work. For us, for you as a project manager, to boost team dynamics, to boost that unforeseen spirit that drives the team members to be able to work together. One needs to make sure that the roles and responsibilities that are assigned to team members are clearly defined without any confusion. So, the situation where the roles and responsibilities are not defined properly or are not properly aligned, right, or are duplicated, can cause a kind of a confusion which will not augur well in the project. We can as well affect the team dynamics in such a specified project. Then formality. A team should agree on how formal meetings reporting and decision making should be. In this case, one should make sure that the team members they what they need their inputs, let's put it this way, needs to be factored in when deciding how or meetings or formal meetings should be held and how reporting should be made. In short, they should be uh, part of making decisions that affect their matters or that affect them as well. Then communication channel is another important variable that can influence team dynamics, right? So what we are saying here is this, there should be that kind of open channel which can boost the sharing of information, can help to share information and coordinate well. So in a situation whereby there is no open channel of communication, it stands to discipline, start to uh, constitute a situation whereby team dynamics can be dampened. Then we have flexibility. So members adjust when task deadline or circumstance change. So for one to be able to boost the unforeseen spirit, which we call team dynamism, one should be able to have a kind of a mechanism instituted in the process of execution of the project to make sure that team members they've got that ability to be able to adjust, adjust to tasks, adjust to deadline, and possibly adjust or have the ability to adjust to any change in the condition. Cohesion is another factors that one needs to be considered here. Cohesion, which means members stick together and support one another during success and challenges. So this is one of the variables or the factors or the moderating factor that could influence team dynamics. So in a situation whereby team members are able to stick together, obviously there will be a high rate of team dynamics, right? So there will be that fluid, high currency of fluid dynamics. Team dynamics where there is where members can stick together and support themselves. Then skill levels is another thing we need to talk about. Then the right skill help the team complete tasks effectively and confidently. So when you are assigning task and responsibility to team members as a project manager, you need to look at their capabilities in terms of the skills that they possess, being able to execute whatever task that is going to be assigned to them. So, in a situation whereby there is a mismatch of task, let me put it this way, the skill requirement to execute this task and the skill possessed by the team member obviously is going to affect, create a kind of a situation whereby the employee or the particular employee concerned or the team member concerned will not be happy. So it can as well weaken the opposite spirit, which we call the team dynamics. Then trust. Trust is another moderating factor that can influence team dynamics. Trust here, we say, allow members to rely on each other and work for the project benefit. So, in a situation where there is a high level of trust, so it can obviously boost the team dynamics, can boost that unforeseen spirit that enhances teamwork. So in a situation where there is low level of trust, of course, contrarily, it's going to dampen uh, the team's dynamics. Then conflict. Conflict must be handled constructively before it damages team performance. When you look at conflict, conflict in a project environment is inevitable. But the most important thing we need to take note of or to consider is how do we resolve a conflict? How constructive are we able to resolve the conflict timelessly? So conflict on its own is another moderating factor or variable, if you will, that can influence a team dynamic. So whenever there is a conflict in a project environment, such conflict should be handled constructively and resolved timelessly in order to boost the or enhance the team dynamics among the team members. Now, improving team dynamics through consultation and decision making. This is one of the strategies that can be instituted or rather that can be employed in a project environment to boost team dynamics. So consultation and joint decision making is about making decision, for example, involving the team members. You as a project manager, by way of consultation, you liaise, you make decision not you're alone with yourself, have to invite the input of the team members. Make sure that their input are captured, considered in your decision making. So when you imbibe that spirit, it can help as well to boost team dynamics, or rather the team dynamics, if you will, among the team members in a specified project environment or in any project environment, if you will. Then, when members are consulted, as I said before, decisions are more likely to be accepted and implemented, obviously, because when members are consulted and their input are considered, not only captured, but considered, then they feel that sense of ownership, right? Then it becomes much more easier for them to accept any consequence or any uh, directives that is being issued, and it makes them to accept it and implement it much more easily. In that case, they take it as their own. You know. Then the process of consultation, you must make sure that one, you right, from invite input before decisions are made. This is what I explained before. You must make sure that that is what we mean by consultation. You consult the team members by inviting their input, let them contribute their inputs. Then you have to discuss, allow members to share their own concerns and suggestions. Then you have to make sure that whatever you need to agree upon needs to be jointly, not solely, not imposed on them. So it must be jointly agreed. You reach a decision that team members understand and support before you start implementing the decision. By so doing, it will have or it can constitute that high level of acceptance and the implementation of such a decision. So, as we have it here, we said productive communication prevent misunderstanding, of course, and build a commitment. So, team members must feel heard, their input needs to be invited and captured, needs to be discussed, and decisions needs to be made jointly or agreed upon jointly. And this can help to prevent misunderstanding and build commitment. So, by virtue of that, team members must feel heard before decisions take effect. And so, joint decision encourage ownership. Right? Encourage not only ownership, buy-in, and makes them to be accountable, right, for whatever decision be made or be implemented, right. Then principles for productive communication. As we said, communication in a project environment is very, very important. It's not just to merely communicate. Such communication needs to be effective. So there are certain things that one needs to consider in enhancing effective communication in a project environment. So here we're talking about principles for productive communication. So use communication to solve problem. Of course, communication is used to solve problem and not to create a conflict. So for a communication to be considered productive, it should fall within this array. Rather, you can use it, should be used to solve problems and not to create conflict. In the first case, if communication is not clear, it's becoming ambiguous, it can create a kind of a conflict. Ambiguity can breed a conflict. So, for communication to be productive, it should be able to fulfill that onerous task of being used to solve a problem. Then we're talking here in terms of active listening. For communication to be productive, listening aspect of it must be active. So what do we mean by active listening? Focus on what others say and check, understanding before responding. Right? That is one of the ways one can be able to promote productive communication. Active listening, when someone is giving you directives, you need to listen properly before you respond. Because as the person is talking and you are responding simultaneously, at the end of the day, you will not be able to listen carefully. And it can create a kind of ambiguity, right? So for one to enhance productive communication, there should be active listening. And there should be mechanism, or there should be in place a kind of a feedback, giving of feedback. Give clear, useful feedback that helps to improve works. So it can as well enhance productive communication. Feedback is very important. How will you know that what you bring or what you put across is being heard or is being productive? You need to institute a kind of what you call a feedback loop where you can be able to receive a feedback for you to ascertain whether what you put across is productive. Then supporting should be another variable that we need to consider as far as the principle of productive communication is concerned. You should be able to offer assistance and encouragement when team members they face challenge. Right. So for one to be able to enhance or promote if constructive communication in a project environment, talk firstly about active listening, right? Being able to have that ability to listen carefully, respond, listen first before you respond, then giving feedback and then supporting where there is need for you to support and encourage the team members, most especially when certain challenges that needs one to weigh in and help out. Then discussing, talk through ideas and disagreement openly and respectfully, right? There could be uh, areas where there are disagreements. So the situation of such should be done in a respectable manner, talk through the ideas and make sure that it doesn't create a kind of unnecessary arguments, right? Then you talk through agreement, talk through disagreement, and make sure that things are being done in a respectful way. And you come to a kind of a compromise. Then negotiating, finding solution that balance between needs and priority, negotiate, right? Then embracing diversity as well in an environment where you have people of different origin or different beliefs or different orientations. So you should create such an embracing and encompassing environment to embrace such a diverse nature. So these are the principles for productive communication that you need to institute or imbibe in this project environment. Then there's what we call constructive, non-disruptive behavior that influence team dynamics. We're still talking about team dynamics to tell you how important team dynamic is as far as the execution of the project is concerned, or as far as the implementation of the project is concerned. So for one to be able to execute the project and be able to achieve the purpose of the project, the team members must work in kind of a situation whereby there should be that team dynamics, right? So there should be a kind of constructive and non-destructive behavior that needs to be exhibited by the team member. So constructive behavior, as we said, help people to work together successfully. Yeah. When each of the team members or all of the team members they are exhibiting constructive behavior. So it will make them to be able to execute the project successfully. So now in terms of the constructive and destructive behavior, here we're gonna discuss about these variables or these factors that can be in place in the project environment. One could say that such a project environment is, or the type of behavior in such a project environment is constructive. Let me put it this way. These are some of the things that you can see in a project environment which can make you to characterize such a project environment as being characterized by, or the type of behavior being displayed by the team members are constructive. Right. So showing sensitivity, right? What do we mean? This aspect is very, very important. Let me repeat myself. This aspect is very, very important because this aspect is always in the exam question every year. And most students, they find it difficult to distinguish. I don't know whether what I would say, perhaps they don't understand the concept when one is talking about constructive, non-destructive behavior, right? They tend to confuse this aspect with destructive behavior. When we say constructive is not the same thing as destructive. Constructive is something positive, while destructive is something that is harmful, right? So that is negative, if you will. If you put it, if you like to put it that way. So when we say constructive behavior is something positive. It helps people to work together successfully. It helps to boost team dynamics. It helps to boost that unforeseen spirit, right? That enhances team dynamics. So one of it, you said sensitivity. Sensitivity is being considerate of other feelings and not only feelings, needs, and contribution. As we do know, a project environment is made up of people of different types, people of different perception, people of different views, right? People of different feelings. So you as a team member, for you to be able to work harmoniously with other team members, you need to be sensitive, right? Sensitive in the fact that, or sensitive in the fact that you need to be considerate to other people's feelings, right? Other people's need and contribution. So in a project environment where sensitivity is the order of the day, or where sensitivity is being exercised, so it can help to boost the team dynamics, right? Then grasping perspective, trying to understand how other people see issues before judging, right? Like I said, people have got different perception, right? So you as a team member in a project environment, you should be able or you should try to imbibe the spirit or being able to grab the perspective of others. Not only the way you see it, try to see the way others will see it or are seeing it. So when you are able to understand how others see the issues, then you will be in a position to be able to work together or to be able to compromise with others rather than creating a kind of or exhibiting what we call a disruptive behavior. It will make your behavior to be constructive. Then be attentive. To be attentive is one of the constructive behavior that we can also like to mention here. Being attentive, being able to listen carefully and give people your full attention, right? You should be able to listen to people carefully, right? And give people your full attention, right? When someone is speaking, you should listen carefully before you respond, right? And you must be able to give your full attention to people. So by so doing, you are adding to the virtue of a team dynamic, which we can characterize as a constructive behavior in the project environment. Then showing interest, right? You can show interest by asking questions and engage with others' ideas. That is how to show interest rather than be aloof, right? You ask questions when there's anything that you don't understand, then you ask, right? Don't be like what we call a bench warmer. For example, in the meeting, or in a situation where you are receiving directives or where you need to brainstorm on what needs to be done to solve perhaps a specific problem in a project environment. There you constitute yourself as a bench warmer without adding anything, without contributing your own input. So you should be able to show interest, right? Let others see you, let others see your interest. Then through posing of questions and engaging with other people's ideas. So it can help you as well to be part of the process. Then offering positive reinforcement where need be, whereby you need to recognize good effort and encourage improvement. So these are some of the behaviors, not necessarily just behaviors, constructive behavior that can influence the team dynamics in a project environment. We have showing sensitivity, grasping perspective, being attentive, showing interest, and offering a positive reinforcement where it needs to be. So these things, like I said, it's very important in the exam when you are asked to give examples of uh, constructive or non-disruptive behavior that influence project or dynamics, team dynamics, sorry to say, in a project environment, you should be able to identify and explain what these type of behaviors are. Now, methods and techniques for building team coherence and spirit. Coherence means to stick together. So, what are the methods and techniques that one can use in a project environment to build a team coherence and spirit? When there is a team coherence and spirit in the project environment, it means that the team members or the various team members can be able to work together towards a shared goal, a common goal. That means working towards having a shared interest in achieving the objectives of the project, or if you like, working together towards the achievement of the predetermined objectives of the project. We work in unison, like one unit, in a unified manner, if you will. Then, methods and techniques for building team coherence and spirit. Project team needs plan method to build unity, right? Trust and a shared commitment. So what we are saying now is it has to be planned. It's not something that you just wake up from your bed or from slumber. You say, okay, I'm going to be there. This is, let there be what? Coherence, team coherence in my project environment. No, it has to be structured. It has to be planned. It has to be laid out. System has to be in place. There should be procedures, processes and procedures that needs to be in place for you to be able to achieve that. So then, by virtue of that, for you to be able to enhance that, you need to plan it. So one of the ways that can be instituted in terms of planning for uh, or planning towards building team coherence and spirit in the project environment, you need to establish clearly defined roles that needs to be assigned to the team members must be clearly defined, must be articulately defined. There should be no duplications of roles and responsibility. There should be no ambiguity in one understanding or in the team members understanding their roles and their responsibility. So it must be clearly defined, no duplications, right? No. So yeah, we said establish clearly defined roles. Every member must know their responsibilities as well as their expectations. What is expected of each members or from each respective team members. They should be aware of it and they should know clearly what their roles are. Right. So that is one of the first move. Then the second one is maintain open communication. Communication is very important. Channel of communication. You must use honest channel where members can raise issues early, right? Your channel of communication should be open. Right. It's not a situation whereby the team members perhaps they got something to raise, and because of the structure of communication, your channel of communication, which is not open, then they find it difficult to come to you or to raise questions or issues that might be bothering them. And it might be bothering them. Yeah. So that is what we are talking about as far as maintain open communication is concerned. Then you need to develop ways to resolve conflict, which is very important. Like I explained before, now that in a situation or in a project environment, if you will, let's put it that way, conflict is inevitable, right? There obviously will be conflict, but the bottom line is what matters is how do you resolve such conflict? Conflict should be resolved constructively and harmoniously. So the way you react to the conflict in terms of its resolution, let me put it that way, is what matters. So one should be able to develop, right, ways to resolve conflict, to address grievances and disagreements constructively and timelessly. So by so doing, it can help one to build a coherence and a team dynamics or team spirit in a project environment, if you will. Then one should model a positive attitude. Of course, you as the project manager, as the leader, you should model a positive attitude for others to follow. right? You lead for others to follow. So leaders and members should demonstrate a commitment and respect, right? Respect, like I said, is a reciprocal. I respect you, you respect me. So if you are a project leader and you don't respect your team members, obviously you shouldn't expect uh, respect or any respect from any from the team members as well. So you should model a kind of positive attitude in whatever way, in all respect, for others to follow. Then, of course, you should be able to celebrate achievement, right? Celebrate achievement, perhaps wherever good stuff or whatever achievement that have been made, it should be celebrated, right? Recognize milestone, right? And in recognizing milestone, it goes a long way to boost the morale and the team spirit, right? Like we've discussed before. In a situation whereby there is lack of recognition of good work or recognition of achievement, it demoralizes the team members. It makes them to get demoralized, get demotivated. Of course, they can get disillusioned when they discover that their achievements are not being recognized or celebrated. Right. So, like I said before, there are different ways you can do that. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend too much money in buying prizes, awards for your team members. You know, there are certain ways to do it cheaply or in such a way that the team members or the specific team members can feel valued. Like I explained the other day, even a mayor pet at the bed say, well done, you've done a good job, you know. Even a kind of a congratulating message, letter, suffices. Or you can even put a kind of a poster on the wall, the best team member of the month. It can help as well. It's a kind of a celebration of achievement. We can as well go a long way in the building the team coherence and the spirit among the team members in the project. Now, features to improve performance of a project. Of course, the performance of a project needs to be enhanced. It needs to be upheld. Otherwise, if the performance of the project is not up to what it should be, or when compared to standard, whenever there is that sharp deviation of the performance of the project compared to the standard requirement, obviously it's going to affect the achievement of the project objective. It's going to hamper, if I may put it more simply, that it's going to hamper the achievement of the project objective. So features to improve the performance of a project. How? What are the things that needs to be considered in improving the performance of a project? So performance improves when work is planned, obviously. But like I always say that when you plan or when you fail to plan, let me put it this way more simply so that you can be able to decode or understand what I'm talking about. If you fail to plan, sorry to say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So for one to be able to enhance the performance, or rather to improve, if you will, the performance of a project, work needs to be planned, right? It needs to be planned. It needs to be communicated, right? It needs to be reviewed at a certain point or measured at a certain point in time. Measure in what sense? You need to measure the performance against the standard to see where you are. You need to, because at the beginning, at the start, or at the inception, or rather at the initiation of the project, there is what we call the standard requirement. that needs to be met for one to be able to ascertain that the project is being achieved. So standard needs to be set at the planning stage, and such standards needs to be communicated to the team members, to every stakeholders involved in the project and their expectations. Then at a point in time, one should be able to measure, right, the performance against the standard, right? Be able to see where there are deviations. If there's any need for you to review, then it has to be reviewed. So it means that performance should not be not necessary performance standard, right? The standard requirement should be cast on stone. So if at the end of the day, at any point in time, you measure your performance to see whether your progress is in the right track. So if there is a kind of a deviation and you tend to look back to zoom in to see where the deviation is. So perhaps it can be that the standard that was set is too high or was too high, if you will. Then you need to review your standard. You know, that is where the element of review comes in. Then in doing that, there should be a process of consultation, right? Consultation, initiate teamwork, you identify information, communicate, you measure performance, you provide feedback. Well, when performance is being measured or has been measured, right, you need to provide feedback in terms of how it stands, right? Like I said, where there is a deviation between the state standard and what is achieved, or the planned and the actual work. We can use those two concepts as well, the planned work and the actual work. So the planned work is what was prepared as a standard requirement during the planning stage. So during the execution of the project, or at the end of the project, as the case may be, you need to perform, you need to, yeah, let me not use perform now so that it will not conflict with my concept of performance. You need to look, measure, right? Measure the actual work against the planned work and see whether you are on track. Right. Like I said, if you happen to discover that you are not on track, right, then you need to zoom in and probe it and be able to enable you to establish what went wrong. So if there's a need for you to review your standard or whatever, then you have to inject that element of correction, corrective measure for you to be able to bring back the project on track. So that is what we mean by this. You consult team members before decision, right? Consult team members before decisions affecting the project. Of course, you start work once decisions are made and allocate tasks, right? So what we are trying to put across here is that it shouldn't be what we call a one-man show, right? It should be a collaborative effort, right? Taking decisions or making decisions with the team members. You start you start to work once decisions are made and allocate tasks clearly, then ensures that you ensure members receive the correct information in a useful format, obviously. Then you measure progress, like I said, against project expectations. Project expectations could be, in other words, you can refer is can be referred to as the plan work, right? Either the plan work or the project requirement, which you can as well call the project expectation in a simplified way as well. Then provide feedback. Then you identify conflict situation early and address them constructively. So these are some of the features that one could consider in improving the performance of a project. And once these things are in place, are considered, are instituted as, as part of the project process of execution, then obviously the performance is bound to improve, all things being equal. If all other factors, external factors, we could as moderating factors are controlled, right? Or being controlled. Now, methods of communication in a project management. We'll be talking about communication, communication, communication. As I said, communication is very important in a project setting, most especially effective communication. It must be effective, or it must be constructive, if you will, right? To say it more simply. Then, how will you be able? The question is, how will you be able to enhance an effective communication or a constructive communication in a project? So, these are the methods. We are going to delve with this method. We are going to delve into the methods of enhancing communication in a project environment, if you will. We say communication maybe, we got different types of communication, of course, right? You got verbal, you got non-verbal, and then we have, yeah, written, which we call verbal, non-verbal. Then we have a gesture. We are going to talk about body movements, right? Communication can be verbal, non-verbal, or written. Each method must be clear and appropriate. Then we have verbal communication, words of mouth, right? Like as I'm speaking now, it's verbal. I'm putting things across to the audience. It's a kind of a verbal communication, which is spoken, right? During meetings, it depends on the medium in which the information is being dispatched, right? It could be dispatched through meetings, discussions, calls, or presentation, right? For example, like what I'm doing now, can be correctly to say my verbal communication is through presentation, by way of presentation, let me put it that way. So it should be clear, respectful, and easy to understand, right? When you are communicating with the team members, to enhance that communication to be productive, it has to be clearly, articulately put across without any element of ambiguity. Right, it must be clear. Then, non-verbal communication is the body language. Like I said, body language, gesture, the way you move yourself, eye contact, and all those kind of stuff, right? That is what we classify as the non-verbal. As we have it here, we say body language, gesture, eye contact, and personal space. What we call space, personal space. Don't get too close to one's personal space. Don't be inside, those kind of stuff. Then, personal space can support or weaken spoken messages. Then we have written by way of emailing, right? Report, minutes of meeting, any art of that correspondence. Okay, let me put it that way, more simply. Correspondence, right? Through correspondence, we can classify that, or more simply, characterize that as a written communication. Email report, means of meeting notices, right? Even what we call memorandum, right? Then all those things can be classified. And it helps to record the decision or share project information. The beauty nature of written communication is being documented. So we could serve as an evidence for record. Yes, it could serve as an evidence, and For record keeping purposes, you can keep those stuff, right? As like I said, which one can make reference to in due course as at when required. That is what we call auditory, whereby one can be able to trace the source of expenses in accounting to each original source. So, yeah, that is what we are talking about as far as this context is concerned. Then we have to choose the method that suits the message, right? So whatever methods that one deems fit to use here must be in line, must be correlated with the type of message, the audience, and the urgency of the information. Right? For example, if it is something that is urgent, you don't need to wait for meetings, right? If it is for you to send the email, and in short, it depends on the context and some of these other variables.